Hello again, welcome to another update. A little bit of a shorter gap between updates, I'm pleased to say this time. I'm going to be fitting a driver and some passengers into the Class 122 Dapol's Bubblecar, which I showed you last time. I'm also going to have a go at fitting a stay alive capacitor, which I've never done before. And I'm just fitting the capacitor, not a power pack, to see how it goes. Many thanks for your comments on the HO00 size debate. The general consensus is, I think, that it's okay to mix people because people are different heights in reality, but vehicles you can't mix them. It's okay to keep them separate and perhaps use HO in the background, creating a forced perspective, you know, shrinking the depth of field type of thing. So some good comments there, and thanks for those. So let's crack on. This could be a long video, so I do apologise in advance. I don't normally like them over 20 minutes, but I'm going to film the whole thing in its entirety, and we'll see how long it is. So here we go. Right, so what we're going to do, and I've never done anything like this before, so I'm not sure how it's going to go. First of all, I'm going to open up this Bubblecar, this Dapol Bubblecar, which is one of my latest purchases. We're going to put a driver in the cab end, the front end, put some passengers in, one or two passengers inside. And while I've got the lid off, I'm actually also going to look into fitting a stay alive capacitor. I've been doing research on this. I'm not using a power pack. I'm going to just fit a capacitor that I've bought myself. So this should be interesting. I nearly always use ESU decoders purely because I find them extremely reliable. And they're very programmable, and I do like them. So they're not the cheapest, not the most expensive either. So I'll be hopefully see if we can get a capacitor. Now the research I've done on capacitors basically says there's no size limit other than the physical size. So we'll see how it goes. So the first thing to do, of course, is to remove the lid, and this is one of the things I really like about Dapol locomotives. They make their body removal really straightforward, especially compared to some people. Some manufacturers, it's really difficult. So obviously I fitted this with a decoder straight after I've got it, so I've already had the body off. Now this one, like some of the Dapol stuff, it's only held in by clips, which seems to work fine. And the way I found, I've actually just cut my nails as well. The way I did it last time was just to use a nail in either side there to prise the body away from the side, and I did that on both sides, and it should basically lift out. That's the plan. They do say you can use little bits of plastic card, which I have done before, so there we go. It's as simple as that. I found that really straightforward, very easy. Just put that to one side. So there's the interior. If I just line that up, under here is the chip. It quite handily says DCC on there, so if we take that off, that's where the DC chip, it's a 21 pin plug-in chip, nice and easy to fit. So there's no leg room for the passengers, as you can see, so we're going to have to cut the legs off. I think we might have to even cut the legs off some of the ones I've already bought without legs, if you know what I mean. So nice little model. Easy to take apart. I wish all manufacturers could do this. Do we really need to be held together with screws, or could we just use clips? I don't know. So if I move the body away and you have a look inside, you can see there's some LEDs inside there, and some switches, as well as a switch here which controls the switch at each end, actually, which controls the cab lights. So that's quite useful. Now unfortunately, when I was looking into this, to remove the cab, so you put your driver in, you have to take out this PCB. This PCB here is one piece. It has some contacts at each end, which make with the cab there, as you can see there. I'll just move that in there. You can see there for the electrical continuity. So there's the couple of screws. There's one there and there's one there. So I'll just loosen these screws. I'll just put that out of the way. So it's just a very small Phillips screw, and it's useful. I'm using the jeweler's screwdriver from the pound shop to magnetise them, I think, because the screws are so small, and I have a habit of losing things, so I'll just loosen that one there. Got the magnet. So this piece here is actually in one section, so you've got a cab, then you've got the PCB for the lights, and then another cab, obviously some electrical continuity. There's also there, you can see 2 locating pins, which help when you're putting it back in, sort of registration pins. Now the easiest way I thought to do this, because I don't think you'd be able to see this, but down here the cab has actually got some tabs, which means it's clicked into place. When I'm investigating, it's clicked into place on the glazing. Not quite sure if you can see that. So it's a bit awkward to get out. So what I think is the best way is probably to lift it from the centre to disengage the 2 ends. That's the plan. I'm actually going to use the stylus from ESU control. I'm going to try and get that under there. No, that's not going to work. Because the middle bit is very flexible, because it's not screwed down now. I'll try something else. We'll try, oh, there we go. There's a better idea. So these cabs actually attach to the PCB, apparently, so you need to be careful with this. This is where having good nails would come in handy, actually. Just got a very small jeweler's screwdriver, see if I can prise that out. Okay, so that's released on that end, and I think it's released on this end. No, it's not quite. And it's stuck on the glazing part there. There we go. So that's loose now. So ease that up, and I'll try and lift this. I've got one end out. So I'm blocking the view somewhat. There we go. Just getting those tabs out. There we go. So you can see there, I think if you can see there, it's these tabs here that's the problem. Not getting it in. So there's the lighting PCB, the LEDs. Just move that to one side. Actually, I'm going to leave that in there. So that's the cab. Quite a bit of good detail, I think, on the cab. Is that focusing? So we'll fit the driver. Okay, looking at the space, I think I'm going to have to cut his legs off below the knees. So you might want to avert your gears. No, still not enough removed. Right, there's the driver in. Minus legs, doesn't look too bad. Nearly put him in the wrong end actually, never mind. So now just add the people. Now if you look at the profile, there's no leg room on this one because of the motor and driving everything in the locomotives. So rather than use my box of people, the 14416 box, which is just seated people, I'm actually going to use this one as the bus driver and passengers one, which is 14404 from Prisa, because a lot of these have the legs cut off, so that'll save me a job doing some surgery. I'll just try a few out. That doesn't look too bad. So I'll have him. There's an old couple there. Right, we've got 7 people in there. I don't know if that's enough. Just looking at where the windows are. I think I might put one more in. Find someone else to put in, I think. And put them there. Just give that a few minutes to dry. Okay, so the glue's dry and there the people all nicely seated. I don't want to fill it up too much. So the next thing is, as I'm going to do with this project, is to put a stay alive capacitor in. Now all the chip manufacturers do power packs, but basically a power pack is generally just a capacitor and a diode. The capacitor is what holds the charge, and on the ESU website and in their manual for their programmers, they actually tell you, sorry, for their decoders, they actually tell you how to fit the capacitor. And what they recommend is, well, what they show, I should say, on the circuit diagram is a 2200 microfarad capacitor, which is this size. Sorry, that's 3300. There we go. That's a 2200 microfarads. So 25 volts, it should really be 75% higher than the voltage you're going to pass through it. So 25 volts is the minimum really you want to get in capacitors. So this is 2200 microfarads, but actually any capacitor will do. and the bigger the capacitor, the longer it's going to hold its charge. So this is a 3300 microfarad one, and this giant one here is 6800 microfarads. As you can see, physically much bigger, and if for some reason this one is actually 10,000 microfarads, and it's a bit smaller, I suppose, than the 6800 one. These have leads out one end. You can also get capacitors that's designed for surface mounting on PCBs, and they look like this. These are usually what you see, and these will be soldered by machines onto a PCB, but you can still use them. And this one is, do you know, I can't remember what it is because they have a different marking. Oh, this is 2200 microfarads as well. So basically it's just finding a capacitor that fits. The problem we've got then with this one, if I just move the cradle in a bit, is there's the chip that goes underneath this small DCC cover. We haven't got any space really to put a capacitor, so what I thought about doing is I'll probably mount it here just on top of the chip and leave the cover off, because the cover is not really necessary, because that part of the locomotive is at the back, so it's not really seen. It's the good storage where you put your bike. So I think I'll see if I can get the capacitor in there. What we also need is a resistor and a diode. One resistor and one diode, as you can see in the diagram. Now the next problem is, this is what you're soldering to, these tiny little pads. If I can get up there, those 5 pads. There's 5 pads on this ESU chip decoder, and we need to solder to 2 of them basically. So yeah, I wouldn't do this if you're a nervous solderer. You need a fine tip and you need some fine wire, which I actually haven't got. So yeah, that's going to be good. So that's the next task. We get the soldering iron warmed up, and we'll solder the pieces in. So what I've done is I've tried to solder the leads as close to the body as possible as these wires. Should have done that with it, I think. So that's going to go in there. I think what would be best to do is put some heat shrink over the bare wires. In hindsight, definitely would have done that. I think next time we'll put some heat shrink in. So we'll just try and work out how long the wires are going to be. Not very long at all. I haven't actually got any different colour. I've only got green wire, which is a bit annoying. Of course I should use different colours, would be easier to identify. Also, this wire is a bit coarse. Some very fine flexible wire I think will be much better. There is a little bit of space here, I think, next on top of the chip, which I can put the spare wire in, which is a good thing, but not a lot of room. So this is the tricky bit, especially with my eyesight. I have a magnifier at work, which is great for stuff like this, close work and very small components. So the top pad, if you can see this, the top pad is positive, and the third pad down, which is the middle pad, is where the negative needs to go. So yeah, this is going to be fun. I think I'll just turn this around. So the top pad near me, if this block wasn't here it might be easier. That's the positive, which is this one. Now the pad is so small, and also I'm sure I don't have to tell you that these decoder chip PCBs are so packed with components. You don't want to keep the heat on too long, otherwise you'll start damaging things. Besides which, you can't keep the heat on too long because the pad itself will actually lift off the PCB. I've seen this happen before. So I've tinned the end. I don't think you can actually see what's happening there. This is where I melt the plastic. Well, it's in place. As you can see, I've melted some of the plastic, so I think it might have been a good idea to take that out. I suppose I should test it now. Okay, so it works. So I haven't damaged the chip, that's the main thing. Change direction. So now what we have to do is try and squeeze that in without breaking the connections from the capacitor, and put the lid on. Yeah, easier said than done. Right, I'll use some tacky tape to stick the capacitor to the side of this box, so it's not actually touching. There's about 2 or 3 millimeters above the decoder. Not that it's a problem, because the case of the capacitor's insulated. It's covered in a plastic film, but I didn't want it to touch anyway, just in case. So that seems to be okay. So we're just got to put it all back together now. It's really just a case of, I think, getting the lugs where they should go, which yeah, easier said than done. It's in that glazed section there. So once again, some little bit of brute manipulation. So you probably can't see, but there's these 2 tabs here. There's a tab there on each side, has to go into a slot, and then there's a tab on here which has to go into a slot in the glazing as well. And once those line up, everything should be hunky-dory in theory. So now I just have to put the lid back on. Make sure the driver's still there. Yeah, there he is. I don't know if you can see that. See if it goes on as easy as it came off. So it's just got 4 tabs, so it should just click into place, shouldn't it really? I'll turn it over. Click it in. Oh, I think that's it actually. It is it indeed. So you can actually see some of the wires through there. Yeah, I don't know if you can. Through the glaze, but you won't notice that, I don't think. You can see the people though. And the driver. So we'll see what that looks like illuminated. So there it is finished. You can see a little bit of wire there off the capacitor. It's not too noticeable, hopefully. And then you can see the passengers on that side and on the other side, and a driver. So there's the illuminated Bubblecar, class 122 from Dapol, with some people in, not too many people. Can't really see the wires because there's no illumination at that end, I don't think, so it's not too bad. And there's a driver. If I turn his cab light on, that's not too bad. So there we go. It works, but that was the first attempt for me to fit passengers and a driver. But the tricky bit was fitting the stay alive capacitor. A bit messy, but it does work. So things I've learnt: you need some very fine, very flexible wire, I think, and a very fine tipped soldering iron and a steady hand. But the fine flexible wire would help a lot to solder onto those tiny pads on the decoder. Remember, when you do your decoders, double check, because you can destroy the decoder if you put the capacitor on the wrong pads, and obviously you'll not get any refund on that if you've tried to do that. Excuse the ambulance outside. I'd be interested to know if anyone else fits stay alive capacitors or power packs, because even if you buy a power pack from one of the manufacturers, you still have to solder it in place yourself. And I think I'm going to be looking for some very fine wire. I think we'll leave it there. That's a much longer video than I usually do. Hope you find some of it useful. I think the more capacitors are fit, the easier it should be. Some of the locos are going to be very tight for space, the 060s, and to be honest, they're the ones that need the capacitors really, so I'll need to look into that. So that's it for this one. Thanks for your comments and subscriptions. If you have any questions, please ask and I'll do my best to answer them. Until the next time, take care.